and flavored to the taste. Cream layer cake. Cream 1/4 cup of butter well with 1 cup of sugar. Add the yolks of 3 eggs beaten light, 1/2 cup of milk, and then 1 1/2 cups of flour sifted twice, with 3 level teaspoons of baking powder. Stir in lightly, last of all, the whites of 3 eggs beaten stiff. Bake in a pan large enough to make 1 thin cake and bake. Cool and split, then spread out on 1/2 pint of cream beaten lightly, sweetened and flavored with a few drops of vanilla. Put on the top cake and dust with powdered sugar. Date cake. Sift 2 cups of flour with 4 level teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 level teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 cup of butter. Beat 1 egg, add 3/4 cup of milk, and mix into the ingredients. Add last 1 1/2 cups of dates stoned and cut into small pieces and rolled in flour. Bake in a sheet in a moderate oven, and serve warm or with a liquid sauce as a pudding. Eggless cake. 1 1/2 cups sugar, 1 cup sour milk, 3 cups sifted flour, 1/2 cup shortening, 1 teaspoon soda, 1/2 teaspoon cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon nutmeg, 1 cup chopped raisins, salt.
Feather cake. Sift 1 cup of sugar, 2 cups of sifted flour, 3 level teaspoons of baking powder, and a few grains of salt. Add 1 cup of milk, 1 well-beaten egg, 3 tablespoons of melted butter, and a teaspoon of vanilla or lemon flavoring, or a level teaspoon of mixed spices. Beat hard and bake in a loaf in a moderate oven about half an hour.
Fig cake. 2 cupfuls of sugar, 2/3 of a cup of butter, 1 cupful of milk, 4 even cupfuls of flour, 5 eggs, 2 teaspoons full of cream of tartar, 1 of soda, sifted with the flour. Mix the butter and sugar until creamed. Add the unbeaten yolks of the eggs. Add the milk and the flour slowly, beating all the time. Lastly, the whites of the eggs. Flavor 2 cupfuls of chopped figs and mix in. Bake quickly. Fig layer cake. Cream 1/4 cup of butter with 1 cup of sugar. Add 1 beaten egg, 1 cup of milk, 2 cups of flour sifted twice with 4 teaspoons of baking powder. Bake in layer tins. For the filling, chop 1/2 pound of figs fine. Add 1/2 cup of sugar and 1/4 cup of cold water. Cook in a double boiler until soft. Let cool and spread between the cakes. Fruit cake. 1 cup dark sugar, 1/2 cup butter, 1 cup molasses, 1 cup coffee, cold liquid, 3 eggs, 3 tablespoons mixed spices, 1 pound currants, 2 pounds raisins, 3 cups flour, 3 teaspoons baking powder, 1/4 pound citron. Gold cake. Mix the yolks of 4 eggs, 1 cup of sugar, 1/2 cup of sweet milk, 1/2 cup of butter, 3 cups of flour sifted 3 times, 1 teaspoonful of cream of tartar, and 1/2 teaspoon of soda. Beat very thoroughly. Use a moderate cake oven. Hickory nut cake. Cream 1 cup of butter with 2 cups of sugar. Add the well-beaten yolks of 4 eggs and 1/2 cup of milk. Sift 3 level teaspoons of baking powder twice with 2 1/2 cups of pastry flour. Reserve 1/2 cup of the flour and add the remainder to the first mixture. Now fold in the whites of 4 eggs beaten stiff, 1 teaspoon of lemon juice, half a dozen gratings of the yellow rind of lemon, and 1 cup each of seeded and chopped raisins and of chopped hickory nuts mixed with the reserved 1/2 cup of flour. Bake in a moderate oven. Cover with a white icing and garnish without meats. Huckleberry cakes. Mix together 1 quart of flour, 1 teaspoon salt, 4 teaspoons baking powder, and 1/2 cup of sugar. Mix 1/3 cup butter, melted with 1 cup of milk. Add it to the flour and then add enough more milk to make a dough, stiff enough to keep in shape when dropped from a spoon, and drop by the large spoonful on a buttered pan or in muffin rings. Bake 20 minutes. Ice cream cake. Cream 3/4 cup of butter with 2 cups of fine granulated sugar. Add 1 cup of milk with 2 cups of flour and 3/4 cup of cornstarch sifted twice with 5 level teaspoons of baking powder. Fold in slowly the whites of 7 eggs and bake in layers. Layer cake. 1 1/2 cups of sugar, 2/3 of a cup of butter, the whites of 6 eggs, 1 cup of sweet milk, 2 1/2 cups of pastry flour, 2 teaspoonfuls of baking powder. Flavor with lemon. Put 2/3 of the mixture into jelly tins. To the rest add 2 tablespoons full of molasses, 1/2 cup of raisins, seeded, 3 figs, chopped, 1 teaspoonful cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoonful allspice, 2 tablespoons full of flour. Bake, when cool, together with jelly, having the dark layer in the center. Margarettes. 1/2 pound of peanuts, 1 pound of dates chopped finely, 1 cup of milk in the dates, and boil. Add peanuts. Make a boiled icing. Take the long branch crackers, spread the filling between the crackers, put on the icing and put in the oven to brown. Plain cake. Beat together 1/2 cup of butter and 2 cups of sugar until light and creamy. Add the well-beaten yolks of 3 eggs, 1/2 cup of milk, 3 cups of flour in which 3 teaspoons of baking powder have been sifted, and last the stiffly beaten whites of 3 eggs. Add any flavoring preferred and bake in a moderate oven. Plain tea cake. Cream 2 level tablespoons of butter and 1 cup of sugar together. Add 1 beaten egg, 1 cup of milk, and 2 cups of flour in which 3 level teaspoons of baking powder have been sifted. Bake in a sheet and serve while fresh. Raisin cake. 1 cup butter, 3 eggs, 1 1/2 cups sugar, 1 cup sour milk, 1 teaspoon soda, 1 cup raisins, little nutmeg, 3 cups flour. One can use 2 eggs and 1/2 cup butter, then bake as usual. Rockland cake. 2 cups sugar, 1 cup butter beaten to a cream, 5 eggs, 1 cup milk, 4 cups flour, 2 teaspoonfuls baking powder, 1 teaspoonful essence of lemon. Snippodoodles. 1 cup of sugar, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1/2 cup of milk, 1 egg, 1 cup of flour, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. Cream the butter, add the sugar, then the eggs, well beaten, then the flour, baking powder, and cinnamon sifted together, and the milk. Spread very thin on the tin sheet and bake. When nearly done, sprinkle with sugar. When brown, remove from the oven, cut into squares, and remove quickly with a knife. They should be thin and crispy. Snow cake. Beat the whites of 4 eggs stiff. Cream 1/2 cup of milk and 1 cup of butter and 1 cup of sugar. Add 1/2 cup of milk and 2 cups of flour, sifted twice with 3 level teaspoons of baking powder. Fold in the whites of the eggs last and 1/2 teaspoon or more of lemon or vanilla flavoring. Spice cakes. For little spice cakes, cream 1/2 cup of butter with 1 cup of sugar. Add 1 beaten egg, 1/2 cup of sour milk, and 1/2 level teaspoon each of soda, baking powder, and cinnamon. Add a few gratings of nutmeg sifted with 2 1/2 cups of pastry flour. Stir in 1/2 cup each of chopped walnut meats and seeded and chopped raisins. Roll out thin and cut in shape, or put small spoonfuls some distance apart on a buttered pan and press out with the end of a baking powder can until as thin as needed. Do not add more flour. Bake slowly. Sponge cake. Whites of 2 eggs beaten to a stiff froth. Beat the yolks thoroughly, then beat both together. Then add 1 scant cup of granulated sugar, beat again, 1 scant cup of flour, beat again, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Sift the flour 3 or 4 times, stir the baking powder in the flour, and lastly add 5 tablespoons of hot water. Sultana tea cakes. Into 3/4 of a pound of flour, stir a pinch of salt, a teaspoonful of baking powder, 3 ounces of butter and lard mixed in equal proportions, 3 ounces of sifted sugar and 2 ounces of sultanas. Chop 1 1/2 ounces of candied lemon peel. Add that and moisten all with 2 well-beaten eggs and a little milk if necessary. Work these ingredients together with a wooden spoon, turn onto a board, and form into round cakes. Place them on a floured baking